Good morning, everybody. It's been a minute um, since I think it was September when I did the last video. Um, since the passing of my husband, I said I was going to follow the journey, but I couldn't. Um, my body, my mind just wouldn't let me. First of all, we were supposed to have his memorial on September 28th, 2024. And the series of events that happened um, leading up to that just made me take a pause from that. Uh, I know everybody is so used to having the funerals, memorials, you know, immediately after the person passes. But in this case, I couldn't. I didn't realize it until a little later that that's what happened. I didn't realize that the answers I was giving his family, his immediate family, um, for why I couldn't have couldn't do the ceremony after the hurricane, um, Hurricane Helene. I didn't realize that what I needed most was time. Um, even though we're used to the way things used to be. How about that? How our family, our parents, grandparents always did it. You had to celebrate that person's life or put them to rest um, immediately after. And to me, not downing anybody's way of doing things, but for me, this was uh, rushed for me. Um, and it's not about me, but it is about me because this was my husband. I had to make sure that I was in the best possible space to be able to celebrate his life, if that makes sense. We're talking 5 months later now. Um, I have gone through very an emotional roller coaster, as you will probably know. But I will say that that time was much needed. I took a much needed break, um, flew to Colorado to stay with my daughter for 2 weeks. I even took my mother, who has dementia. Now, the purpose of this trip was to get away and relax. Okay, so let's address that. That was right before November. Wait a minute. Wait. Let's back up. Let's just back up. Let me go back to why things didn't happen. That was my my flower, a greenhouse inside my seedlings. So you can see that. Yes, my hair. I'm getting ready to do my hair. It's been conditioning since yesterday, so I'm getting ready to put a little bit more on it and do some things. But anyway, I digress. Let's go back. The series of events that happened the week of um, the week that we were supposed to have his ceremony, his celebration. It wasn't a celebration. It was more of a memorial. And that's not what I wanted for him. We, during that week, um, what happened, the pastor wasn't right. But when I went to meet with the pastor, there was something that was said that I didn't agree with, or my spirit didn't agree with. And I'm just going to say this. My husband, at that point, he had already visited me twice. Yes, that's a real thing. If you believe in God, if you have faith, your the love that you have with your loved one, if you just relax your mind, if you take the time and just listen to what God is saying and what he's allowing you to see, you will see that there were signs. There are signs from your loved ones. Um, so when I said that to him, he actually said something that I didn't think a pastor was supposed to say. And it just, me being in my grief at that time, because it was very, very new, it was still new. I just went with it. And I was just like, I'm saying to myself, I was like, that's not good. And the other thing was the message that he was willing to say. It had something to do with, it had to do with, I'm just going to say it, us not being in attendance in a church. So his message for my husband's funeral or memorial service was going to be about why it's important for us to attend church. Okay, you got it. So you're going to scold us during his memorial service. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, mind you, this came after everything happened, after my brain had time to process, which was months later. Okay, all right, let's go. All right, so that Monday morning, the week of his memorial service, was to be that Saturday, that following Saturday. Monday morning, I called the pastor to let him know I did not want that type of message to happen, because I started feeling very uneasy about the whole thing. I was already stressed about making sure that we had everything right for his service. So it was taking a bit out of me. So Monday, I did talk to him, and I said, that is not the message that I want you to give. And it was on something else, and I can't even remember along the lines of whatever it was, but it was something about my husband. He didn't know my husband, so he couldn't give too much about my husband. So he agreed, and we went on. Now, Tuesday, Hurricane Helene was not a hurricane. She was a tropical storm, and she was threatening the coast of the East Coast, where I am in Georgia. Yeah. Um, and it was a real threat, uh, as you know. So Wednesday, it was more than a threat. Okay. So Wednesday, I think Wednesday, I said, okay. And I was really exhausted at this point. I was very emotional because I didn't know how I was going to respond at the memorial service. I was very emotional. So Wednesday, was it Wednesday? Wednesday. Wednesday hit, I believe, or was that Thursday morning? No, it was Wednesday, because I woke up super early and turned on the weather channel, and I saw that she was very close to where we are, or heading this way. And I said, you know what? It was 5:30 in the morning. I had to make a decision right then and there. Okay, I said, let me call my brother and sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, Mark's brother and sister-in-law, and see how they feel about it. I was still given grace, and I called them, and you know, people were no, I texted them, and they were a little upset about it, but they understood, um, sort of. But excuse me, but that's what happened. They were upset, and said people, understandably, people have made reservations. They've made, taken time off, and all of that. And that's exactly, especially with flights, people, most 99% of the people had to fly in. So, or drive. So that's why I wanted to do it early enough so people could get their deposits back, or whatever they did or needed to do that day. Lord and behold, excuse me, it got really bad Thursday, and Thursday night it hit, so it tore up my area. I'm not going to even lie, it tore up this area. um But let me back up a couple of days. When I made the last call to people to make sure that they knew that this was going to be postponed, even the pastor, everybody, I mean, everybody, even the funeral home, everybody. When I made the last call to that person, I can't tell you the relief I felt. My body felt, my mind felt when I knew that this was not going to happen. And I'm going to explain that for a second. At this point, again, I was exhausted and didn't realize it. I've been going on adrenaline the entire time. I was emotional the entire time. Did not know how I was going to respond at the memorial at that time. This, when that happened, everything just shut down. And I cried. I cried. I cried. I cried tears of relief. The pressure was off. But then the pressure was right back on Thursday night when this happened, when Helene decided to show her ugly face. So again, I went from immediate grieving to immediate survival mode again. When my husband passed, I didn't have time to sit in my grief because I care for my mom who has dementia and she lives with us. Mark was the person who cared for her while I was, which allowed me to be able to go to work. He was injured at his job 4 years ago, now 5, but that allowed me to continue. All right, so we're moving forward. And that was the best decision ever because lights were out for days. It was hot. Ooh, yeah, in September, y'all, it's it's hot in Georgia. Okay. So that was the best decision. People who were upset were no longer upset because they saw it for themselves. So good call. Thank you, Jesus. So let's move on. Now back to, everybody wanted to know after we were able to, it took about maybe a couple of weeks to get everything back together. People were still out of electricity weeks later. But people wanted to know if there was a date to reschedule for his memorial. And my thing was at that time, so I thought, I did not want to go through that again mentally. Prepare everything and then have to cancel everything. That was a lot of work. It was a lot of stress on my kids who helped. There's a lot of stress on Mark's family who was willing to help. It was a lot of stress on everybody, but I took the brunt of it because I knew, as his wife, I wanted everything to be perfect. So I had my hands in everything, and that's how I am naturally. Um, so leading up to that, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want this to happen. We're still in the middle. We're at the middle of hurricane season. We had a few out there threatening at that time. And I decided, you know what, let's not have this right now because the hurricanes, I don't want people to get caught. That's what I thought. That's what I was saying in my head. Um, his family didn't like it. Well, some members of the family didn't like it, and we had a interesting rift there. But I understood after I sat down and wrote the anger letter. That's a part of grief, y'all. That's a part of grief. Writing, journaling what you're feeling. These people will never see it, but you write it out. You get it out. My anger letter uh, was a was an anger letter, but during something happened during that letter while I was writing that letter. That letter allowed me to see some things. It opened my eyes to some things. I have scriptures all over on this wall here, but it allowed me to be real with myself and why I kept putting his memorial off. And the short answer is when I was writing this, I'm telling you, typing, excuse me. When I was typing this, it just hit me like a rock. It was like, wow. Oh my goodness. The reason why I kept putting it off was not the reason that I kept saying. The reason why I kept putting this off was because I wasn't ready to handle this yet. That was the reason. That was the real reason. Okay, yes, the hurricanes had something to do with it, but it wasn't the real reason. And when God put that in my spirit, I was like, oh, Jesus. I said, oh, wow. Okay. Now, mind you, they had already prepared or planned his memorial in his hometown. And it was going to happen that week that I'm talking about. I can't even remember. I think it was the first weekend in November. Yes, November 2nd was the date that they were going to have his memorial. So at that point, I was no longer mad. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. And God just started working with me. He just said, look, you have to realize Mark had a past before you, Val. Yes, he had a past. So them having his memorial in his hometown was probably the best thing they could do for him. And I said, oh my goodness. At that point, I wasn't invited officially. It was a blanket invite for everybody. So I didn't get that invitation, that personal invitation. And that's okay because, you pick your battles. And I made up in my mind right then that I was going to go to the memorial service in South Carolina. And I'm glad I did. I got there a little late, but everybody was speaking. People were speaking about him, and they were speaking about the Mark that they knew. And it was a wonderful thing to celebrate his past at that point, because that put his family, I'm talking his family before me, and his friends before me, people who knew him in his past before me, that allowed them to memorialize their person. The person that I knew wasn't the person that they knew. And I had to, let me say that again. The person that they knew, they, them, was not the person that I knew. So it was a good thing. When I got up there to speak, I said, I apologize for the whole riff, because in my mind, I couldn't handle it. And my truth came out. I actually said it. I'm an open book, y'all. I don't have a problem apologizing to anybody. If you talk to my husband, when he was alive, he'd say, yeah, that's a hard pill for her to swallow. Admit when she's wrong, but only to him. So anyway, when I got up there to speak, I thanked them for having that, because that's when, you know I, I told them my reasons, what I thought were my reasons, and I told them the real reasons, and they understood that. Everybody understood, but at that point, it wasn't for everybody to understand. It was the point that I was Mark's wife, and I needed to be there to witness his past, and that's what I did. I enjoyed the service. I really enjoyed it. It was nice seeing everybody. Everybody was wondering if I was going to show up. Um, and I did, because it wasn't about me at that point. It was about him. And it's always a bit about him. But now, fast forward to the present, things have, I took that trip that I mentioned earlier. I took that trip to Colorado, um, and brought my mom, so I didn't have to feel like I had to come back at a certain time. If I needed to be there longer, then I could be there longer. I didn't shorten it. Yes, I did get homesick. Uh, if I could have come back the day or two after Thanksgiving, I would have. But realizing that's the busiest time of the year, no, was not getting on the flight. Not with her. And heck, not with myself. But I was ready at that point, because I went out a week and a half before Thanksgiving. So when I got there, it was from day one, coming off that plane, it was immediate. It was the woosah moment. It was, that's where I started going. My husband would be with my mom, and he allowed me to go and stay with her for a few days. I never went over maybe 3 days. That's all they could handle at that point. But now, because she requires much more assistance and attendance, then I actually include her in everything I do. So, and I love that. I love that she's enjoying her life, as much as she can remember. So, anywho, we get to Colorado, and literally, y'all, my daughter has this huge sectional, huge shades on one end, huge shades. It could be two people sit there, and it goes all the way around. Oh my goodness, we, and I'm saying me and mom. When I tell you, I literally sat there on that shades for 2 weeks. Normally, when I go to Colorado, I want to do this, I want to do that. The year before, I had K all over the place. But this was a different time. And the first couple of days, I didn't realize how much I needed that just to do nothing. I didn't realize that I was as tired and exhausted as I was. Had no idea. Even when the memorial was canceled and everything just broke down, in my mind is I still didn't put two and two together. But when I went out there and just sat and sat, I watched so much Netflix. It was ridiculous. I enjoyed that. That is what I needed to turn my brain off and let it heal. That is what I needed to let my body just not move so much and start the process of healing. I'm going to interject a part into this video because some of you might not know. A month and a half before my husband passed, we had a series. Because it affected the whole household. I had a series of physical ailments, physical and financial issues that happened starting July 17th, 2024. Well, it didn't start. It actually progressed to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. Stress-related issues. I left my job that morning, an hour after I got to work, because I couldn't take the pain anymore. It was nauseous, fever, whole 9 yards, pain on the side. And when I walked into ER and the lady took my blood pressure, she's like, Miss Williams, did you walk here? I mean, did you drive here? Sorry. Did you drive here? I said, yes, ma'am, I did. I left work and came home. She said, do you know that you're at stroke level? I said, no, ma'am. I knew I was feeling crappy. I was feeling something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. But didn't know. She said, you will be admitted. Just like that. Yep. You're not going anywhere. So, okay, let me move forward. The issue that was causing part of the problem, was we found out through an ultrasound, was my gallbladder was infected, and I had a 22 centimeter gallstone, one big one, huge, that was causing all pain, and my gallbladder was infected. So guess what? Emergency surgery was scheduled for the next day, only because, get this, 3 other people were in ER with gallbladder issues, y'all. Let that sink in. 3 other people. So that means 4 people total on the same day, same place, with gallbladder issues. And 1 appendicitis, who actually ended up being my roommate. I was bumped back because her appendix was about to rupture. Okay, I'm not going into that anymore. I'm just say, okay, something's up with that, but that's another video. Being a gardener, you recognize things like that. Anywho, sorry. All right, so I have the surgery midday, July 18th. My blood pressure is still high. It's still high. July 19th, which was a Friday, I didn't know when to call my husband to come get me because my pressure was still too high for them to release me. They were doing everything from the time they took my gallbladder out, everything to get my pressure to come down. And if it did go down, it went right back up. Yeah. Yeah, so late Friday, I got it down to a point where they got it down to a point where they would allow me to discharge. I was a bit concerned if my pressure was that high. Why would you discharge me? That's another issue, but yeah, I'm good with that. Came home, um, recovering, trying to recover. Um, things happened that very next week with my job. Yeah, I'm trying to recover, trying to keep from having a stroke. Let me just say, if you are an employer, if you are an employer, compassion has to be in there somewhere. Common sense has to be in there somewhere. Um, I can't say too much about it, but let's just say after through calls and I'm trying to recover that it didn't go well. Um, after that week of irritation, I was fired, terminated. I'm not going to say the reasons. I was on medical leave and fired. Uh, the reasons I that was sent to me. Yeah. Um. So I lost the only income. I know. Let me just stop saying that. I didn't lose it. It was taken from me. The only income that they knew was running this household, they took from me. Let that sink in for a second. But I wasn't angry. Mm-mm. Wasn't angry. There are other things that went on with that, but let that sink in. That's another thing. So let's just move forward because I'm not going to talk about that too much. Um, my husband, when that happened, it took uh, an hour for me to gain my composure to be able to tell my husband. He this was July, so he was he was very much alive at that point. Um, and when I went in to tell him, he was so upset, and he said, "Boo, what are we gonna do?" I said, "What do you mean? What are we gonna do?" I said, "Babe, look, now is the time that you've been saying and I've been saying we have to tap into our faith. We have to. We are going to be all right." And I could see the worry on his face, but I wasn't. I really wasn't. I knew where my faith was. I knew what I'd been doing. I've been following his steps, the steps that I asked him to order, him being God. I asked him to order my steps in March, and I've been following him no matter what ever since. My husband took that very hard, as a man, any man would. And I thought that things were going to, with him, that he would tap into his faith a little bit more. But, ooh, son. Okay, there you go. But I don't think so in the end. I remember him before the week before he passed. Okay, I ran into this. Let's go back just a second. So after this happened, I was in recovery mode. I was originally I was supposed to go back. Yeah, I had 2 weeks to recover. That was, to return to work. But since I was terminated, um, I was just in recovery mode. I needed that extra healing, and I really did. It was the beginning of healing. Actually, it wasn't the beginning of healing, but um, the week that I remember the week that before he before the blood vessel ruptured. I remember that Monday. He said, "Babe, you not angry? You're not upset?" I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I can't afford to be." I said, "If I allow this to continue to fester in me the way that it would have before I asked God to order my steps, I wouldn't be here right now." I said, and I remember him saying so vividly, I'm sitting here at the computer at that point, just like I am right now. He was over there, and he turned off the TV, and he said that to me. And when I said that to him, he's like, "Well, I am really angry about it." He said, "I'm angry for you because that was wrong." I said, "Don't be." I said, "Don't be angry. Just let it go for right now. It's not doing you any good. You have your own issues. Just let it go." Well, that's like telling this wall right here to let it go. You tell a man that, yeah, okay, if he's used to providing, you can say that all you want, one ear, out the other. Seriously. So August 21st, he did. He was able, in between the time at August 13th to August 21st, he was able to secure an interview, and he's very excited about it. And that morning that he got up, I'm here again at the computer. I was up because actually what happened to me it did start getting to me. I was up very early that morning, and he texted me that morning, when he woke up, and he said, "What's wrong?" He said, "What's wrong, boo?" So instead of me texting him back, y'all, August 21st, that was the day that he did this. That was the day of his interview. I went in to the room and I just laid on his chest and we just talked about it. We hugged. I loved doing that with my husband. I just get slide in the bed with him and we would just talk about every and anything for how long we wanted to. That was a comfort for both of us. But he had an early morning interview, so I couldn't stay there forever. But we talked about things. We talked about what happened and why I was up that early. Well, I'm always up that early, but he knew that it bothered me because yeah, he knew that it was starting to get to me just a little bit. My brain was starting to process that part of my grief. Okay. First, I lost a part of my body that I had to adjust to mentally. Second, I lost my job was taken from me that my brain had to adjust to. So I was firing now on all cylinders. All I needed was rest. That's all I needed. My job was high stress. We won't go into that either, but it was high stress. And I was the only person. So anyway, that day he came in, sat on the sofa where he usually sits. And I'm right here because I was actually doing some things about that situation. I was looking up things. And he sat there and he was in focus mode. My husband was a CNC programmer. He had just graduated from Savannah Tech after years of going little by little by little when he could. So when he was off this semester, he only had one semester. I said, "Look, why don't you just go do that, finish it." His goal was to walk across that stage. He did. June 18th, 2024. So now we're at August 21st. He's about to go have his first interview in 4.5 years, y'all. I thank my husband for taking care of my mother every day. Every day I thanked him. I did what I could to make sure that he knew that he was appreciated because he made it happen. Anyway, so he was in focus mode, going back to his morning. So it was time for him to leave. He got up. He came over to me and said, "Boo, I'm out." And he was just smiling, had his Kango on. He was just smiling. He was ready, y'all. He was ready. I kissed his head, smelled his head like I normally do. And I kissed him and I said, "Go get him, boo. Go get him, sweetie." That's what I said. "Go get him, sweetie." I said, "You got this." That big smile of his with those dimples. I love making my husband blush. But he walked out and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I got this." He walked out of the door. I watched him as he did. Didn't think anything of it. 12 o'clock came. I was like, "Well, it's taking a little while. Maybe, they're hiring him on the spot or, he's walking around the plant, getting familiar with the plant." Didn't think anything of it because he normally calls me for everything, with everything. And I did the same. So 2 o'clock, my mom's new sitter came in and she hadn't met us. So she wanted to meet me and she did, but he was still out. This was 2 o'clock now, from 9:30 to 2 o'clock. And she asked where he was so she can meet him because he would be the person that would be home when she came. And I said, "That's a good question." I said, "Well, he went on an interview at 9:30 this morning. He had an interview and um, I haven't heard anything from him." I said, "But it's just like him to want to surprise me." And she said, "Yeah, that's it. They probably went ahead and had him to do his blood work and all that." And I said, "Yeah, he would want to surprise me on something like that because he would be very proud to be able to work again." He was so excited. Um, so about 3 o'clock, she and I were talking. 3 o'clock, phone rang. Normally, in this is the hospital, and normally I don't answer. Okay, fine. I put it out there. Thought it was a bill collector or something. And something told me to answer the phone. That phone call changed my life. That's when they asked me if I knew Mark, if I'm his wife, and things went from there, as you all know. And I kind of lost. Actually, I lost it. They didn't know if he was going to live and how long he was going to live because his brain bleed was really severe. A blood vessel ruptured in the back of his At the base of the skull, pretty much the third and fourth ventricles, which is a place they do not operate. So he was left to his own devices at that time. They put a drain in and everything. So, I'm panicking the whole 9 yards. Anyway, you already know that part of the story. Let me bring you forward. When he passed, yeah, when he passed, that was a hard thing for me. So now I'm bringing you fast forward after I pick up his urn. I picked up the urn before then. So now let's move forward to November, December, January 2025. Those were very, 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 very difficult months for me. And it is a very difficult time for people who lose someone. That was those first that everyone talks about. I immediately went into grief share the week after my husband passed. That helped. That helped a lot because I could actually express things that hadn't happened or was happening at that time as I was going through grief share. Some people had already been through it, so this was like their second or third time. You can go as many times as you feel you need to go through, but because my feelings were still raw, it was it was really difficult. But it was something that I needed because I'm a talker. I talk out my feelings. I don't like to bottle them in. Journaling is one way of doing it for me, but my journaling is talking to you all. That's my journaling. Now, Grief Share did wonderful. Helped through those months that I talked about. There was a lot of emotions there. There was anger. There was acceptance. Let's talk about acceptance for a second. Near the end, someone asked me if I was still angry at my husband or angry what happened or at God. And that's one of the questions for Grief Share too. And at the end, I said, no, I'm not. Because during this time, my best friend actually, she and I talked about this. And I, I had to talk it out because I was angry with him for not doing what he was supposed to do. Him being my husband. I was never angry at God. I have never been angry at God. And that's one of the things that people miss if they sit down, give themselves time to heal. You will realize a lot about yourself and the person who passed. And then you start, if you're the person, if you're like me, I was like, oh, wow, okay. God was speaking to me, and he was putting things in me to make me realize that, whoa, it wasn't only on you, it was on him too, to do what I asked him to do. That was the problem. And I had to accept that my husband was a very deep thinker. I mean, really deep. Some of the stuff that, oh my goodness. But there was something something kept him from telling me his deepest, darkest secrets. Um, and I think that is part of what was happening. I knew some things. He wasn't perfect. Neither am I. He wasn't perfect, but I loved him just the same. When you marry somebody, this was my third marriage. I tried, y'all. When you marry somebody, You decided you're going to take them for good, for the good and for the bad, until the bad just outweighs the good. And no, I can't say that either, because in this case, it took us mm, 12 years of marriage to finally figure it out that neither one of us going anywhere. So, I mean, we might as well enjoy. And it was beautiful after that. There were still issues that he did not want to work on. And I had to accept that. That was a part of me being able to talk to you today. God was working with me ever since the last video. He had to. He brought me through a lot. I am just at a point and a place in my life that I am able to hear him. Be real with what I hear and what I see. My husband has visited me 5 times on 5 different occasions. We'll get into that later. But he has. He let me know he was okay. The visit that the one visit that is very, very, very made me smile was when I was in Colorado. My daughter, I came downstairs and I was still on East Coast time. I kept myself on East Coast time, so I would wake up at 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning there. Here it was 2 hours ahead. So I kept my body on East Coast time. I'll go downstairs by myself, have my time before mom would wake up. I love having my morning time, just like now. I love my morning time. So as I walked about to walk in her kitchen and turn the light on, yeah, I kid you not, my mom's bib that was on the chair from her eating about 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock the night before, just fell. Just like that. Just dropped from the chair. Dropped from the chair. When you have something draped over the chair, it just doesn't just drop like that. It literally, something just dropped it. Someone just dropped it. I kid you not. So when that happened, I was like, let me make sure all the animals were upstairs. I knew that because we had a gate up there. All the animals were upstairs. There was no air on that could move something like that. I immediately said, "Oh, you're here." I said, "Of course you're here." I said, "You came to check on me, didn't you? This time you really came to check on me because you knew I was having a hard time." This was the day before Thanksgiving. And I was having a really, really hard time leading up to Thanksgiving. I mean, really, I was crying every day that week. And I'm talking boo-hooing. So I said, you're coming to check on me because you knew I wasn't going to be okay. Thanksgiving was his holiday because he loved to cook. He loved to make the deep fried turkey wings for us outside. It was like a little mad scientist, injecting them. You see him outside. He was in his own element. So I knew I would have a really hard time, and so did he. So he came to check on me, and I told him, I said, "I'm glad to know you're okay. I'm glad to know you're still around, but I'm going to be okay. I promise you, I'm going to be okay." I said, "You know me. You don't have to check on me so much. Go enjoy your eternal life. You have a brand new life. Keep looking in on me every once in a while, but keep me in your spirit. Keep me in your heart and enjoy your life. I promise you I'm going to be okay." And I went on and I just flipped the light on from there. And the next visit I got was right around Christmas, which I did tell him. I said, "But I do expect you to show up somehow during Christmas. I expect that." So he did. he rustled some paper that's in my room, in our room. He rustled some paper and I said, "Go, you here?" I said, I knew you was gonna show up. That was Christmas Day, actually. I said, I knew you were gonna show up. I said, but Merry Christmas. I said, I miss you like you would not believe. You, whew, and you knew I would. So thank you for giving me that part of you. And with that, he went on. I haven't gotten too many signs since then. But like I said, God has been working with me for a while now. And I'm gonna make a second video. Okay. I'm gonna turn this off and I will make another one. All right. Thanks.